Captain Dae-ho Kim stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the broken alien station floating in space. The metal structure was old and twisted, like something had crushed it with giant hands. His ship, the Harmony's Edge, moved slowly toward the wreckage. The stars around them seemed extra bright in this part of space, far from any civilized worlds. "How long has this thing been out here?" asked Soo-jin Park. She was the ship's navigator, a young woman with sharp eyes who could read star charts, better than anyone Dae-ho knew. Her fingers moved across the control panel, checking their position. "The computer says maybe 10,000 years, replied Woo-bin Lee from his engineering station. He was always fixing something on the ship, his hands covered in grease and his mind full of technical knowledge. "But the metal looks much older than that. I think someone built this place a very long time ago." Dae-ho nodded. The Terran Colonial Survey had sent them to explore this area of space, looking for new worlds humans could live on. Instead, they found this ancient station. It was the first sign of alien life they had discovered in 3 years of searching. "Any signs of life?" Dae-ho asked. "Nothing," said Haiwan Choi, the team's xenoarchaeologist. She studied dead alien civilizations for a living. Her job was to learn about species that no longer existed. But there might be artifacts inside, things that could teach us about whoever built this place. The station was huge, bigger than 3 human cities put together. It had many levels and sections, all connected by corridors that curved in strange ways. The metal was dark gray, almost black, and covered with symbols nobody could read. "Take us closer," Dae-ho ordered. "But be careful. We don't know what kind of defenses this thing might have." Soo-jin guided the ship toward a large opening in the station's side. It looked like a docking bay, designed for ships much larger than theirs. As they got closer, their sensors picked up energy readings from deep inside the structure. "Captain," Woo-bin said, his voice excited, "there's still power in there. Not much, but something is keeping parts of this station running." They docked, without problems. The station's systems seemed to recognize their ship as friendly, which was strange. How could something built by aliens work with human technology? The 4 crew members put on their spacesuits and entered the station. Emergency lights flickered along the corridors, casting weird shadows on the walls. The gravity was light, about half of what they were used to on Earth. "The air is breathable," Haiwan reported, checking her instruments. "But keep your suits on anyway. We don't know what kind of bacteria or viruses might be floating around." They walked through corridor after corridor, past rooms filled with broken machines and empty chambers. Everything was covered in dust. The symbols on the walls looked like a language, but not like any human writing system. "Look at this," Soo-jin called out. She was standing in front of a large door covered with intricate carvings. "I think this might be important." The door was different from the others. It was made of some kind of crystal instead of metal, and it glowed with a soft blue light. The symbols carved into its surface seemed to move when they looked at them closely. Woo-bin examined the door's control panel. "The technology here is incredible," he said. "It's using quantum mechanics in ways our scientists haven't figured out yet." "Can you open it?" Dae-ho asked. "I think so. Give me a few minutes." While Woo-bin worked on the door, Haiwan studied the carvings. "These symbols are definitely a language," she said. "But it's unlike anything I've seen before. The structure is completely different from human writing." The door suddenly opened with a soft humming sound. Beyond it was a circular room with a high ceiling. In the center of the room stood a pedestal made of the same crystal as the door. On top of the pedestal was a sphere about the size of a human head. "What is that thing?" Soo-jin whispered. They approached the sphere carefully. It was transparent, like glass, but filled with tiny points of light that moved around inside it like living stars. As they got closer, the lights began to pulse faster. "It's some kind of data storage device," Haiwan said, pulling out her scanner. "But the technology is far beyond anything we have. The energy readings are off the charts." Dae-ho reached toward the sphere, then stopped. "Should we touch it?" "Let me scan it first," Haiwan said. She ran her instruments over the crystal ball from different angles. "It doesn't seem dangerous, but it's definitely active. The quantum patterns inside are incredibly complex." When Haiwan's scanner touched the sphere's surface, something amazing happened. The room around them suddenly filled with light, and the sphere projected a three-dimensional map into the air above them. It showed thousands of star systems, connected by glowing lines. "It's a star map," Sujin breathed. "But look at the stellar positions. These stars aren't where they should be." She was right. The map showed the galaxy as it existed millions of years ago, when the stars were in different positions. It was incredibly detailed, showing not just star systems, but individual planets and their characteristics. "This is the oldest star map anyone has ever found," HFY said, her voice full of wonder. "The aliens who made this could map the entire galaxy when humans were still learning to make fire." Sujin was studying the map carefully, comparing it to her own star charts. "Wait," she said suddenly. "There's something wrong here. Look at this section." She pointed to an area of the map that should have shown a star system near Earth's region of space. According to the ancient map, there should have been a bright star there surrounded by 7 planets. But when Sujin checked her current charts, that area of space was completely empty. "The star is gone," she said quietly. "A whole star system that existed when this map was made. It's just not there anymore." Wu Bin examined the map more closely. "Stars don't just disappear," he said. "They can explode or collapse into black holes, but there should be some trace left behind. This area of space is completely empty. No debris, no radiation, nothing." Daeho felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying an entire star system was destroyed?" "Not destroyed," Sujin corrected. "Erased, like someone removed it from existence completely." The sphere pulsed brighter, as if responding to their conversation. New sections of the map appeared, showing more detail about the missing system. It had been magnificent, a large yellow star with 7 worlds, 3 of them covered in oceans, and continents that looked like they could support life. "Look at the orbital patterns," HFY said. "This wasn't a natural solar system. Someone arranged these planets deliberately. The spacing is too perfect, too organized. Whoever lived there had incredible technology," Wu Bin agreed. "They could move entire planets." As they studied the map, more information appeared. The sphere seemed to be responding to their interest, showing them deeper layers of data. They saw cities on the planets, vast structures that stretched across continents, and ships that traveled between the worlds. "There were billions of beings living in this system," HFY whispered. "An entire civilization, more advanced than anything we know about. And now they're gone without a trace." Sujin was working with her instruments, trying to determine exactly when the system had disappeared. "Based on the stellar drift patterns, I think this happened about 2 million years ago. Maybe longer." "What could destroy an entire star system so completely?" Daeho asked. Nobody had an answer. They stood in the crystal room, staring at the ancient map that showed them a mystery bigger than anything they had ever imagined. Somewhere in their region of space, a civilization that could move planets had been wiped out so thoroughly that not even their star remained. The sphere pulsed one more time, then dimmed slightly. The map remained visible, but fainter now, as if the device was conserving energy. "We need to take this back to Earth," Daeho said finally. "The Science Council needs to see this." "Agreed," HFY said. "But we should be careful. If something could destroy a civilization this advanced, we need to know what it was, and whether it might still be out there." As they prepared to remove the sphere from its pedestal, none of them noticed the small blinking light that had appeared on their ship's communication console. A signal was being transmitted from their location, traveling out into the deep space between galaxies, where ancient things waited in the darkness. 3 days after finding the crystal sphere, Daeho's ship was no longer alone in space. 2 massive alien vessels had appeared without warning, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. The ships were bigger than anything humans had ever built, and they belonged to the Galactic Council. "Captain Kim," came a voice over the communication system. The words were translated by computer, but the tone was cold and commanding. "This is Council Representative Vextar. You will prepare for boarding immediately." Daeho looked at his crew. They had been studying the crystal sphere for 3 days, trying to understand its secrets. HFY had made copies of all the data. They could extract, but there was still so much they didn't know. "Acknowledged, Representative," Daeho replied. "We welcome the Council's interest in our discovery." Sujin made a face. She didn't like the council representatives. Most alien species treated humans like children who had just learned to walk. They acted like humans were too stupid to understand important things. "They probably want to take the sphere away from us," she whispered. "Let them try," Wu Bin muttered. But Daiho shook his head. Fighting the council would be suicide. Their ships had weapons that could turn the Harmony's edge into space dust in seconds. The airlock opened, and 3 figures entered the ship. The first was Vextar, a tall being made of living crystal. Light moved through his transparent body, like blood through veins. Behind him came Threx, a creature that looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and compound eyes. The third alien was smaller, covered in gray fur with tentacles instead of hands. "Where is the artifact?" Vextar asked without greeting them. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "In our research lab," Daiho replied. "We've been studying it carefully." Studying. Threx clicked his mandibles in what might have been laughter. Humans studying council-level technology? That is like watching insects try to understand starship engines. Hyawan stepped forward, anger flashing in her eyes. "We found this artifact. We have every right to study it." "You have no rights here," Vextar said, his crystal body pulsing with bright light. "This sector of space falls under council jurisdiction. Any alien artifacts found here belong to the council." "Since when?" Sujin demanded. "This is open space. No one has claimed it." "Since now," Threx replied. "The council claims this system and all artifacts within it. You will hand over the device immediately." Daiho knew they had no choice. The council could take the sphere by force if they wanted to, but maybe he could convince them to let his team continue their research. "The artifact contains information about a destroyed star system," he said. "Our xenoarchaeologist has made some interesting discoveries." "Irrelevant," Vexitar said. "Human science is too primitive to understand such technology. You will give us the artifact and leave this system." They led the aliens to the research lab where the crystal sphere sat on a specially built stand. It was still glowing softly, the star map visible inside its transparent surface. When Vextar saw it, his crystal body flashed bright with excitement. "Incredible," he whispered. "This is a quantum mapping device. We have only heard legends of such technology." Threx moved closer, his compound eyes reflecting the sphere's light. "The quantum signatures are unlike anything in our databases. This predates all known galactic civilizations." While the aliens examined the sphere, Hyawan quietly activated a small device hidden in her pocket. She was making a backup copy of all their research data. If the council took the sphere, at least they would have their analysis to take back to Earth. "Tell us what you have learned," Vextar commanded. "The sphere contains a star map showing the galaxy as it existed millions of years ago," Hyawan explained. "We discovered evidence of a destroyed star system in what is now human space." "Destroyed how?" asked the third alien, speaking for the first time. His voice was high and musical. "We don't know. The entire system vanished completely. Not just the planets, but the star itself. There's no trace left behind." Vextar and Thrax exchanged looks. Something passed between them, a communication humans couldn't understand. "You will give us all your research data," Vextar ordered. "Every scan, every analysis, every piece of information you have gathered." "Why?" Daiho asked. "What's so important about one destroyed star system?" "That is not your concern," Threx replied. "Your species is too young to understand such matters. Leave the important work to those with superior minds." Sujin couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Superior minds? You didn't even know this place existed until we found it. Maybe your superior minds aren't as smart as you think." Threx turned toward her, his 4 arms spreading wide in a threatening gesture. "You dare insult the council. Your species has been in space for less than 200 years. We have been exploring the galaxy for thousands of centuries. And yet you miss this," Wu Bin said quietly. "The most important archaeological find in galactic history, and humans found it first." Vexitar's crystal body flashed angry red. "Enough. You will transfer all data to our ships immediately, or we will take it by force." Daiho had no choice. He ordered his crew to transfer their research files to the council ships. But while they worked, he noticed something strange. The sphere was reacting to the presence of his crew differently than it did to the aliens. When Hyawan had first touched the device, it had immediately activated and shown them the star map. But when Vextar tried to interact with it, nothing happened. The sphere remained dim and unresponsive. "Why is it not working?" Threx demanded. "Perhaps the quantum interface requires calibration," the third alien suggested. "Or the technology is too damaged to function properly." But Dayho was watching Haiwan's face. She had noticed the same thing he had. The sphere only responded to humans. While the aliens argued about the device, Wubin made a discovery of his own. The sphere was emitting energy patterns that matched human brainwaves. It was specifically designed to interface with minds like theirs. "Captain," he whispered, "the quantum signatures are tuned to human neural patterns. That's why they can't activate it." Dayho nodded slightly. This was information they needed to keep secret. The council representatives spent 2 hours trying to activate the sphere without success. Finally, Vextar ordered them to take the device to their ship anyway. "Our scientists will determine how to operate it properly," he declared. As the aliens prepared to leave with the sphere, Hewan made one last attempt to learn more about the destroyed star system. "Representative Vextar," she said, "in our studies, we found quantum echoes in the sphere's memory core. They seem to contain information about what destroyed that star system. Don't you think it's important to understand what happened?" Vextar stopped. His crystal body went completely dark for a moment, then flashed bright white. "Quantum echoes?" he asked. "Yes. Psychic imprints left behind by whoever created the map. They're trying to communicate something, but we haven't figured out how to access them yet." "Show me," Vextar commanded. Hyawan activated her scanner and ran it over the sphere. The readings showed faint energy patterns that seemed almost alive, moving through the crystal in complex waves. "These patterns match theoretical models of consciousness transfer," she explained. "The creators somehow stored parts of their minds in the device." Threx moved closer, his compound eyes reflecting excitement. "If this is true, we could learn about technology that predates the Council itself." But when they tried to access the quantum echoes, nothing happened. The patterns were there, but they remained locked away, responding only to the presence of human minds. "The interface protocols are incompatible with our neural structures," the third alien reported after several failed attempts. Vexitar's body flashed angry red again. "Impossible. Council technology is superior to anything humans possess." "Perhaps," Dayho said carefully, "you should allow our xenoarchaeologist to continue her research. She might be able to unlock the quantum echoes." "Absolutely not," Threx replied. "We will not allow primitive humans to handle such important technology." "Then you'll never know what the echoes contain," Sujin pointed out. "And you'll never learn what destroyed that star system." The aliens argued among themselves in languages the translation computers couldn't understand. Finally, Vextar made his decision. "We will take the artifact to our research facilities. Our scientists will find a way to access the quantum echoes, without human assistance." As they prepared to leave, Hyewan activated her hidden device one more time. This time, she wasn't just copying data. She was recording the sphere's quantum patterns, including the locked echoes that only human minds could access. The council representatives left with the crystal sphere, but they didn't know that Hyewan had managed to preserve the most important part of the discovery. Hidden in her research files was a complete quantum map of the echoes, waiting for someone with the right kind of mind to unlock their secrets. After the alien ships disappeared, Dayho's crew gathered on the bridge to discuss what had happened. "They know more than they're telling us," Sujin said. "Did you see how they reacted when we mentioned the destroyed star system?" "They've heard of this before," Haiwan agreed. "Whatever destroyed that civilization, the Council knows about it." Wubin was studying the energy readings from their encounter. The sphere was definitely designed for human minds, but that's impossible. Back on Earth, Hyewan worked day and night in her laboratory. The Council had taken the crystal sphere, but they couldn't take the quantum patterns she had recorded. Her hidden device had captured something the aliens didn't know existed. E.T. Complete map of the quantum echoes locked inside the ancient artifact. Jihun Nam arrived at the laboratory 3 days after their return. He was one of Earth's best language experts, a man who could decode alien writing systems that had puzzled scientists for years. Dayho had asked him to help unlock the secrets hidden in the quantum echoes. "Show me what you found," Jihun said. settling into a chair next to Haiwan's workstation. Haiwan activated her quantum scanner and projected the echo patterns into the air above them. They looked like living things made of light, moving in complex waves and spirals that seemed almost like writing. "These aren't just random energy patterns," she explained. "They're organized, structured, like thoughts that have been converted into quantum data." Ji-hoon studied the patterns carefully. "You're right. This looks like language, but not any kind I've seen before. The structure is completely different from normal writing systems." "That's because it's not written language," Haiwan said. "It's direct thoughts, preserved in quantum form. The beings who created this sphere somehow stored parts of their minds inside it." Over the next week, Ji-hoon worked to understand the quantum language. It was incredibly difficult because the thoughts weren't organized like human thinking. The alien minds worked differently, processing information in ways that seemed impossible. But slowly, patterns began to emerge. Ji-hoon discovered that the echoes were organized around specific concepts: star systems, technology, and something else that appeared again and again in the patterns. "There's one concept that shows up everywhere," he told Haiwan. "It's associated with darkness, with emptiness, with hunger." Hunger? Not for food, for something else. The patterns suggest something that consumes, that devours, and it's connected to the destroyed star system. As Ji-hoon worked to decode more of the quantum language, Haiwan made her own discoveries. The beings who created the sphere called themselves the Architects. They were an ancient species that had existed when the galaxy was young, building incredible structures and moving planets like humans moved furniture. The Architects were remarkably similar to humans in many ways. They were curious, always asking questions and exploring new places. They were stubborn, refusing to give up even when things seemed hopeless, and they were creative, finding new solutions to problems that seemed impossible. "Look at this," Haiwan said, showing Ji-hoon a decoded section of the quantum echoes. The Architects built that seven-planet system themselves. They moved the worlds into perfect orbits around their star. "Why would they do that?" Ji-hoon asked. "Because they could. Because they wanted to create something beautiful and perfect. They were artists as much as scientists." But as they decoded more echoes, a darker story emerged. The Architects hadn't been alone in the galaxy. There had been other species, other civilizations exploring the stars and building their own worlds. And then something had come from the darkness between galaxies. "They called it the Voidborn," Ji-hoon said, his voice quiet with fear. "Something that existed in the empty spaces between galaxies, feeding on everything." The quantum echoes showed fragments of the Architects' memories from their final war. The Voidborn were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They weren't really alive in any way that other species understood. They were more like a force of nature, a cosmic hunger that consumed entire star systems and left nothing behind. The Voidborn don't just destroy planets, Haiwan realized. They erase them completely. They consume matter, energy, even space itself. That's why there's nothing left where the Architect system used to be. The war had lasted for thousands of years. The Architects and their allies fought desperately against the Voidborn invasion, but they were losing. The enemy was too powerful, too alien, too hungry. In their final days, the Architects had done something incredible. They created warning beacons like the Crystal Sphere, storing their knowledge and their desperate message for any future species that might find them. "This is the warning," Ji-hoon said, translating the final echo patterns. "The Voidborn aren't gone. They're dormant, waiting in the darkness between galaxies, and they can be awakened." "Awakened how?" Haiwan asked, though she was afraid of the answer. "By certain types of technology. The Architects discovered that advanced quantum manipulation sends signals into deep space, signals that the Voidborn can detect." Haiwan felt cold fear spread through her chest. Quantum manipulation, like the quantum tunneling drives the Council, has been developing. The more they decoded, the more terrifying the picture became. The Voidborn had come to the galaxy before, drawn by the quantum signatures of advanced civilizations. They had consumed everything, leaving only empty space behind. Then they had returned to the darkness to wait for new prey. "The Architects tried to warn everyone," Ji-hoon said. "They scattered these spheres across the galaxy, hoping that future species would find them and learn from their mistake. But nobody listened, Haiwan realized. The galaxy forgot about the Voidborn. Civilizations rose and fell, and the warning was lost. Until now. The quantum echoes contained detailed information about the Voidborn, how they moved, how they fed, and most importantly, how they could be detected and potentially stopped. But the echoes also contained something else. A map showing the locations of other architect installations across the galaxy. Hidden bases where the ancient species had stored weapons and technology designed to fight the Voidborn. They prepared for this, Haiwan said with growing excitement. The architects knew they were going to lose, so they left behind everything. Future species would need to continue the fight. The problem was accessing these hidden bases. The architects had designed their security systems to only respond to minds like theirs, minds that thought like humans. That's why the Council can't activate the sphere, Ji-hoon realized. The architects designed their technology for species like us, curious, stubborn, creative. They were preparing for humans, even though we wouldn't evolve for millions of years. As they worked to decode the final echo patterns, Daeho joined them in the laboratory. He had been monitoring Council communications, and what he had learned was disturbing. The Council is moving forward with their quantum tunneling experiments, he reported. They're planning to activate the first galaxy-wide network in 6 months. They can't, Haiwan said. If they start using quantum tunneling technology on that scale, it will send signals across the entire galaxy. The Voidborn will detect it. We have to warn them, Ji-hoon said. Daeho shook his head. I tried. I sent our research to the Council Science Division 3 days ago. They refused to even look at it. They said human research is too primitive to be worth their time. The irony was bitter. The Council's arrogance, their refusal to listen to humans, was going to doom the galaxy. They thought themselves superior, but they were about to make the same mistake that had destroyed the architects. What about other human colonies? Haiwan asked. Can we warn them? I've sent copies of our research to every human world, Daeho replied. But most of our colonies don't have the technology to understand it. And even if they did, what could they do? We're not strong enough to stop the Council. They sat in the laboratory, surrounded by the decoded warnings of a dead civilization, knowing that history was about to repeat itself. The Voidborn were still out there in the darkness, waiting for the quantum signals that would call them home. But as they studied the architect data, Ji-hoon made one more discovery. Hidden in the final echo patterns was something unexpected. Coordinates for an architect installation in human space, less than 2 weeks' travel from Earth. The architects left us more than just warnings, he said. They left us weapons. The base was located in an asteroid field that human surveys had marked as empty space. But according to the architect data, it contained a fully operational research facility with technology designed specifically to fight the Voidborn. We could go there, Haiwan said. Learn how to use their weapons. And then what? Daeho asked. Even with architect technology, we're just one ship. The Council has thousands of vessels. But we know something they don't, Ji-hoon pointed out. We know what's coming. We know where the other installations are hidden. We could build a resistance network using architect technology. It was a desperate plan, but it was the only chance they had. The Council wouldn't listen to warnings, so maybe they would listen to weapons. As they prepared for their secret mission to the hidden architect base, none of them noticed the Council monitoring station that had been secretly tracking their communications. Vextar already knew about their research, and he was not pleased. The race to prevent galactic catastrophe was about to become much more dangerous. Meanwhile, in the deep space between galaxies, ancient sensors detected the first weak quantum signals from the Council's experimental drives. Something vast and hungry began to stir in the cosmic darkness, remembering the taste of stars and the satisfaction of consuming entire worlds. The Voidborn were waking up. The Council chamber was a massive crystal dome floating in space near the galactic core. Representatives from hundreds of alien species gathered there to make decisions that affected trillions of beings across the galaxy. Today, Daeho stood in the center of that dome, feeling very small and very human. He had requested this emergency session 3 weeks ago after discovering the architect installation. The hidden base had contained exactly what they hoped for: weapons technology, designed to fight the Voidborn and proof that the ancient threat was real, but convincing the Council was proving impossible. Humans, declared Zactor, a representative whose species looked like walking trees with too many arms. Always seeing monsters in shadows. Your kind has been in space for barely 2 centuries, yet you presume to lecture civilizations that are millions of years old. Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber. Most council species viewed humans as primitive newcomers who didn't understand how the galaxy really worked. Honored representatives, Deho said, trying to keep his voice calm. We have evidence. The quantum echoes contain detailed memories of the Voidborn invasion. The architects left specific warnings about quantum tunneling technology. Quantum echoes, Vextar said with derision. His crystal body flashed dismissive colors. Fairy tales and ghost stories. Our scientists have examined the artifact thoroughly. There are no quantum echoes. Because the artifact only responds to human neural patterns, Haiwan interrupted from the observation gallery. She wasn't supposed to speak, but she couldn't stay quiet while the council dismissed their research. Threx clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his species. Convenient. Technology that only humans can operate. How wonderfully superior that makes you feel. Show them the installation data, Ji-hoon whispered from beside Haiwan. Deho activated his presentation system. 3-dimensional images filled the chamber, showing the architect base they had discovered. The technology was incredible. Weapons that could destroy matter at the quantum level, shields that could hide entire star systems, and most importantly, sensors that could detect void-born presence across galactic distances. We found this base using coordinates from the quantum echoes, Deho explained. Everything inside was designed to fight something called the Voidborn. The architect's final war was against entities that consume entire star systems. And where are these terrible Voidborn now? Asked Melthera, a floating jellyfish-like being whose species had existed for 10 million years. If they were so dangerous, why has no one seen them? Because they're dormant, Deho replied, waiting in the space between galaxies. But they can be awakened by certain quantum signatures. The same signatures produced by our tunneling drive experiments, Sujin added from the gallery. This caused an uproar in the chamber. Representatives began arguing in dozens of languages, their voices creating a cacophony that the translation systems could barely handle. Silence! Commanded the Council Prime, a being so ancient that no one remembered what species it belonged to. Human Deho, you are claiming that our most important technological advancement will somehow summon mythical monsters from legend? Not legend, Deho insisted. Historical fact. The architects documented everything. Their star system wasn't destroyed by natural causes. It was consumed by the Voidborn. Even if your fairy tale were true, Vextar said, which it is not, the Council cannot halt progress based on human paranoia. Our quantum tunneling network will revolutionize galactic travel and communication. It will also send signals across the galaxy that the Voidborn will detect, Haiwan called out. The architect's data is clear about this. Data that only humans can supposedly access, Threx replied. How convenient that no other species can verify these claims. Deho realized they weren't going to listen. The Council had made up their minds before he even arrived. They saw humans as inferior beings whose opinions didn't matter. Representatives, he said, making one final attempt. I'm not asking you to stop the tunneling project permanently. Just delay it until we can study the architect warnings more carefully. Absolutely not, declared the Council Prime. Galactic development will not be halted because humans are afraid of ancient ghost stories. The session ended badly. The Council voted to proceed with the quantum tunneling network on schedule. Worse, they voted to classify all architect research as restricted technology that humans were too primitive to understand. As Deho left the chamber, Vexitar approached him with several Council security officers. Human Deho, the crystal being said, you and your crew are ordered to surrender all architect artifacts and research data immediately. We already gave you the sphere, Deho replied. All research data, Vextar repeated, including any copies you may have made and any additional artifacts you discovered. Deho felt his heart sink. Somehow the Council knew about the hidden base and their research into the quantum echoes. I don't know what you're talking about, he said carefully. Threx stepped forward, his four arms moving in threatening gestures. "We know about your secret installation. We know you have been conducting unauthorized research with architect technology. You will surrender everything or face charges of violating council security laws." In the observation gallery, Haiwan and the others watched in growing alarm. This wasn't just about dismissing their warnings anymore. The council was actively trying to suppress their research. "Captain," Sujin whispered, "we need to leave. Now." But it was too late. Council security forces had already surrounded them. They were escorted to a detention facility where they spent the next 6 hours being questioned about their research. The interrogation was led by a species Daeho had never seen before. Tall, pale beings with large black eyes who seemed to read thoughts as easily as words. "You discovered something at the architect installation?" one of them said, its voice echoing strangely inside Daeho's head. "Something that frightened you." "We found weapons," Daeho admitted. There was no point in lying to telepaths. "Weapons designed to fight the Voidborn. And you believe these Voidborn are real?" "The evidence is overwhelming. The architects left detailed records of their war against them." The telepathic being exchanged glances with its companion. "What if we told you that some council members are already aware of the Voidborn threat?" This was news to Daeho. "You know about them?" "We know that colonies in the Outer Rim have been disappearing, entire star systems going dark without explanation. We know that our long-range sensors have detected unusual energy signatures at the galaxy's edge. Then why won't the Council listen to our warnings?" "Because admitting the threat exists would cause panic. Trillions of beings live in this galaxy. If they learned that an unstoppable force was coming to consume everything they know, civilization would collapse into chaos." Daeho felt sick. "So you're going to let the tunneling network activate anyway, even knowing it might summon the Voidborn?" The Council leadership believes they can control the situation. They think they're superior. Technology can handle any threat. "They're wrong," Haiwan said from across the detention cell. "The architects had technology far beyond anything the Council possesses, and they still lost." The telepathic interrogator studied her carefully. "You really believe the Voidborn cannot be defeated?" "Not by conventional means," she replied. "But the architects found other ways to fight them. That's why they left the installations, to give future civilizations the tools they would need." After the interrogation, they were released with strict orders to cease all architect research and report to Council oversight teams for regular monitoring. Their ship was searched, and all visible research equipment was confiscated. But the Council made a mistake. They underestimated human stubbornness and creativity. Before the search, Wubin had hidden backup copies of all their research data in the ship's quantum shielding. The data was there, invisible to Council scanners waiting to be retrieved. As they left Council space under heavy escort, Ji-hoon made a disturbing discovery. By monitoring Council communications, he learned that the quantum tunneling tests had already begun. "They're not waiting 6 months," he reported quietly. "The first full-scale activation is scheduled for next week." "How long before the Voidborn detect it?" Sujin asked. "According to the architect data, anywhere from days to months. But once they start moving, nothing will stop them." They were out of options. The Council wouldn't listen to warnings and wouldn't allow humans to prepare. Defenses! But there was one thing they could still do. "We go back to the architect installation," Daeho decided. "We learn how to use their weapons. And we prepare to fight, even if we have to do it alone." "One ship against the Voidborn?" Wubin asked. "One ship to start with," Daeho corrected. "But the architect data shows locations of 12 other installations across the galaxy. If we can reach them, activate their defenses, maybe we can build a resistance network." It was a desperate plan, but desperation was all they had left. As they set course for the hidden architect base, none of them noticed the small Council tracking device that Threx had secretly attached to their ship. The insectoid commander was curious to see what the humans would do next. The first reports came from the Outer Rim colonies, entire star systems going dark without warning. No distress signals, no debris, nothing but empty space where thriving worlds had existed just days before. Daeho's team was at the second architect installation when the news reached them. They had been traveling for 2 weeks, activating hidden bases and learning to use ancient weapons that could tear holes in space itself. Kepler Station just went silent, Su-Jin reported from the communication console. That's the 5th colony this week. Hyewan looked up from the architect control panel she was studying. The Voidborn are here, just like the warnings said they would be. They were inside a massive underground complex built inside an asteroid. The architects had constructed it to look like empty rock from the outside, but inside it contained enough weapons to destroy a fleet. More importantly, it contained manufacturing facilities that could build more weapons automatically. How long until the Council admits we were right? Wubin asked. He was working with architect technology to upgrade their ship's engines and weapons. They already know, Ji-hoon said sadly. I intercepted Council communications this morning. They're calling it unexplained colonial losses and possible terrorist activity. Terrorist activity? Su-Jin laughed bitterly. What kind of terrorists can make entire star systems disappear? The answer came 3 days later when the Voidborn reached Council space itself. The first attack hit a major trade hub called Nexus Prime, home to 12 billion beings from dozens of species. In less than an hour, the entire system was gone. This time, there were survivors. A few ships had been traveling between systems when the attack happened. Their crews described something that defied all understanding of physics and biology. The Voidborn weren't ships or creatures in any normal sense. They were zones of nothingness that moved through space, consuming everything they touched. Stars, planets, even space itself seemed to dissolve when they passed through. They don't just destroy matter, Hyewan said, studying the survivor reports. They erase it from existence. That's why there's no debris, no radiation signature. The consumed matter simply stops existing. The Council finally acknowledged the threat, but their response was exactly what Daeho had expected. They sent their most powerful warships to engage the Voidborn directly. The results were catastrophic. Council vessels with weapons that could crack planets found themselves powerless against an enemy that absorbed energy and matter equally. Entire fleets vanished without even slowing the Voidborn advance. They're trying to fight physics with physics, Ji-hoon observed. But the Voidborn exist outside normal physical laws. That's when Yujin Kang arrived at their asteroid base. She was a military strategist from Earth, sent by the human government to coordinate resistance efforts. Her transport ship carried 50 volunteers from various human colonies, people willing to learn architect technology and fight an impossible war. The Council is in full retreat, she reported. They're evacuating their core worlds and falling back to the galactic center. Some species are even fleeing to other galaxies. What about their quantum tunneling network? Daeho asked. Shut down completely. But it's too late. The damage is done. Yujin had brought disturbing news from Earth. Human colonies were next in the Voidborn path, and Earth's government wanted to evacuate everyone to distant star systems. We can't run, Hyewan said firmly. The Voidborn will follow quantum signatures anywhere in the galaxy. The only way to survive is to fight. With what? Yujin asked. Our military has maybe 200 ships. The Council had thousands, and they accomplished nothing. With these, Wubin said, gesturing to the architect weapons surrounding them. Technology designed specifically to fight the Voidborn. Over the next week, they trained the human volunteers to use architect equipment. The technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also intuitive for human minds. Where Council species struggled to understand the alien interfaces, humans found them surprisingly easy to master. The architects really did design this for us, one volunteer said after successfully activating a quantum disruptor cannon. It's like the controls know what we're thinking. The first test came when a Voidborn scout reached human space. It consumed 2 outer colonies before Daeho's force could intercept it. The battle was unlike anything anyone had experienced. The Voidborn entity was a sphere of absolute darkness that consumed light itself. Normal sensors couldn't track it, but architect technology could detect its quantum signature. Firing quantum disruptors, reported the volunteer gunner aboard their upgraded ship. The architect weapons struck the Voidborn entity with beams of twisted space-time. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the sphere of darkness began to shrink, its edges becoming unstable. It's working, Su-Jin shouted. The quantum disruption is destabilizing its existence field. The Voidborn scout entity collapsed into itself and vanished. For the first time since the invasion began, one of the creatures had been destroyed. News of the human victory spread quickly through the galaxy. Suddenly, every surviving species wanted to know how primitive humans had accomplished what advanced civilizations could not. "We're offering to share the architect technology," Yujin told Deho, "but only with species willing to follow human tactical doctrines." This created a strange reversal of galactic politics. Species that had dismissed humans as inferior were now begging for human help. The Council, which had refused to listen to human warnings, was asking human leaders to take command of the resistance. "They want us to save them," Hewan said with dark humor. "The same species who called us too primitive to understand important technology." But Deho knew this wasn't about revenge or superiority. It was about survival. "We help everyone," he decided. "Human, alien, it doesn't matter. The Voidborn don't care about species politics." The resistance grew quickly. Human crews traveled to the remaining architect installations, activating weapons and training alien volunteers to use them. They discovered that while the technology worked best with human operators, other species could learn to use it effectively. More importantly, they learned that the architects had prepared for exactly this situation. The installations were networked together, designed to coordinate a galaxy-wide defense against Voidborn invasion. "There are 47 installations total," Ji-hoon reported after decoding the master control system. "When all of them are active, they create a quantum barrier that the Voidborn cannot cross." "How many do we have operational?" Yujin asked. 18 so far, but we need at least 30 to establish an effective barrier." The race was on. Human teams spread across the galaxy, activating architect bases while the Voidborn consumed system after system. Some installations had been discovered and destroyed by other species over the millions of years since the Architect's fall. Others were located in Voidborn-controlled space, requiring desperate rescue missions. The final activation came just as the main Voidborn force reached the galactic core. Deho's team, now commanding a fleet of Architect-equipped ships, raced to establish the quantum barrier before the creatures could consume the remaining civilizations. Barrier activation in 3, 2, 1. Across the galaxy, 32 architect installations came online simultaneously. A web of quantum energy spread between them, creating an invisible wall that stretched across space itself. The Voidborn entities struck the barrier and recoiled. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered something they could not consume. The quantum barrier was made of the same non-existence they embodied, creating a perfect defense. Trapped within the barrier, the Voidborn began to turn on each other, consuming one another until only a few entities remained. These were contained in specialized quantum prisons, studied by architect science, and eventually sent back to the darkness between galaxies. The galaxy was saved, but at enormous cost. Billions of beings had died, entire civilizations had been erased, and whole sectors of space remained empty and dark. In the aftermath, the galactic community faced a new reality. Humans, once dismissed as primitive newcomers, had become the galaxy's saviors and teachers. But more importantly, they had learned something about themselves. "We're not superior to other species," Deho told the reformed Galactic Council. "We're just different. The architects chose us not because we're better, but because we think differently." "How so?" asked Vextar, his crystal body now showing respect instead of dismissal. "We question everything. We refuse to accept that something is impossible just because someone says it is. And when we find warnings from the past, we listen to them instead of assuming we know better." The architect installations became the foundation of a new galactic civilization, one based on cooperation rather than hierarchy. Humans shared their knowledge freely, but they also established new protocols for technological development. "Progress without wisdom is just sophisticated destruction," Yujin said at the memorial service for the Lost Worlds. The architects learned that lesson. Now we have too. Haiwan stood beside the quantum echo projector, watching ancient architect memories play in the air above them. The long-dead civilization had finally achieved their goal. They had warned the galaxy and provided the tools needed for survival.